by Joe Tiffer, and live from the 36th Coast Communication Congress in Leipzig. All talks at Congress are live translated between English and German and to one additional language. Visit c3linko.org for more details and information how to access the streams. We appreciate your feedback. Please use the hashtag C3T. Your translation in this talk are provided by Qui, YT, and OS 10,000. In this talk, we now warmly welcoming Johanna.
Ja, hallo.
Hello, everyone.
Dass ihr euch alle hierher getraut habt.
Nice that all of you have made your way here, and especially if there's many people on the demonstration, happy that you still made it here.
Wie gesagt, mein Schwerpunkt ist
My focus,
my
talk is going to be, I'm a bit nervous at the moment.
Es wird sich, der Vortrag ist in
My
3
talk
Teile
is
eingeteilt.
divided into 3 parts.
Und zwar werde ich
So,
erstmal im Allgemeinen was
The first one is
über
going to be
Connected
generally
Mobility
about
sagen.
connected mobility,
Das wird dann auch noch mal etwas unterteilt in
which is
verschiedene
divided
Themenbereiche.
in
Dann
different areas.
Das eigentliche Projekt, was ich gerade dabei bin zu initiieren, das Digital Bike 23 und
The Digital
danach
Bike 23.
noch über das Teilprojekt
And then I'm going to be
E-Bike Brain,
about the sub-project e-bike brain,
was ich demnächst in Berlin beginne.
which I will be soon starting in Berlin.
Ja, zur Connected Mobility.
For the connected mobility,
Also erstmal wollte ich fragen, gibt es
So first of all,
Leute, die schon mal E-Bikes gefahren sind?
I wanted to know if there's anybody in the audience who've rode e-bikes before. Yeah, that looks differently. That's much different from before.
So ein Ding rumgeschraubt.
So who's actually worked on one?
Okay, weil ich hatte auch einen Vortrag.
Because I already
Der
had a
erste
talk.
Vortrag ist
The first one that I made was
2007
2007 by Gizmo.
Ein sehr spannender Vortrag
Also,
im
pretty good talk.
Chaos Camp. Und beschäftigt sich jemand professionell?
And you want to know if
E-Bikes,
professionally anybody was doing e-bikes.
Okay, super.
Oh, wow, great.
Gut,
Good.
dann starte ich mal los. Erstmal geht es jetzt so ein bisschen kurzer Einblick in die
So first, this is going to be a bit about what's happening in connected mobility. It's currently developed on many areas in parallel, quite chaotic and fast and uncoordinated. Many things are trying to be connected. But the problem that we are creating for ourselves, what many studies actually predict, is that we are stepping back to the automotive time, because the focus of the big industry, automotive and the tech industry, is on automotive. It's like this, the technology industry tried to build cars, and you could say that they actually failed. The automotive companies, they were very late, and now they've caught up, and now they are teaming up and focusing a lot on autonomous driving. The issue of mobility is, of course, as I said, it's predicted a long time, is that there are very high covered costs. For example, the server costs, the communication and transfer costs. That is very hard to predict. Mobility will create lots and lots of data because the cars are communicating amongst each other. They're communicating with the environment. This data has to be administered. It must be transferred on servers, and a good network needs to be built for this. And the issue is, of course, between all of these, there's still us users who
oder nicht aus Versehen,
who
die nicht vernetzt
unintentionally
werden, aber wo
need to
eigentlich
be connected
fraglich ist,
within.
wo ist
And then the question
unsere
is,
Position
where is
in
our
dem
position
ganzen
in this entire
Vernetzungschaos.
networking chaos?
Ich will diesen Teil jetzt in 3 Bereiche
So I
einteilen,
wanted
und zwar
to
das autonome
divide this
Fahren
part
selber,
into 3
dann
parts. The first part is the
Mobility as a
autonomous
Service
driving
und
itself, the
dann
second part, mobility as
will
a
ich
service,
als
and
kleines Fallbeispiel die E-Roller
then I wanted to give the
rausgreifen,
example
die wir
of
seit 2017
e-scooters,
beobachten.
which we are seeing since
Im autonomen
2017.
Fahren ist es im
Within
Lastverkehr,
autonomous driving, in
gibt es schon
the
viele Versuche.
freight
Das ist hier ein
transport, there have
Versuch
been many
von Daimler, und der
trials. This is a
ist
trial from Daimler,
2015 über die
which drove in
Testfelder hier in Deutschland
2015
gefahren, über
through
die
the test circuits in
Autobahnen
Germany,
und es wird halt
also
immer mehr
over a
geplant, autonom
autobahn.
im Lastverkehr zu fahren.
And
Das hat sicherlich auch
there's been many trials of
Vorteile, wie ihr
having freight
alle
transport
wisst,
in an
weil die
automated way. This
Fahrzeuge
has clear
einfach ohne
advantages
Fahrer
because these
permanent laufen können. Sie
these
können
cars
besser
can run
getaktet werden.
permanently without a driver, and of course the
Das
frequency
Tempo
can be
kann
higher and the
optimiert werden.
speed
Man
can
kann
be
sie elektrisch
optimized.
fahren lassen.
They
Man muss sie
can
aber
be
nicht
driven
elektrisch
electrically,
fahren
but you
lassen.
don't have to.
Das Problem ist
The problem
hier,
is
dass nicht
that
klar ist, wie, ob nicht
it's not
noch
clear
mehr Transporte auf die
if
Straße
then
verlegt
this wouldn't
werden,
even mean
was
that there's even
dann
more
für
transport
die
on the road, which
CO2-Bilanz
would, for
extrem
our
ungünstig ist.
carbon output, be very
Ein
bad.
anderer Teil ist natürlich, sind die individuellen Fahrzeuge.
Another
Ich habe
topic
hier
is the
ein
individual
nettes
traffic.
kleines
So now I
Fahrzeug
have a very
rausgeholt.
cute
An und überwiegend
car
werden
here
gerade eher SUVs
in
entwickelt, die auch einiges
large amounts.
kosten.
It's usually SUVs,
Und
which
die
cost a lot,
Automotive-Hersteller,
and the
also immer mehr
automotive
Automotive-Hersteller
companies,
deklarieren, dass
they
sie in der
declare
kommenden Zeit
that they want in the coming times
Mobilitätsdienstleister werden wollen, weil sie halt sehen,
service
dass
providers for mobility,
durch die Vernetzung
because they
ganz
see
andere
that
Themengebiete
through
für sie
connecting,
dazukommen
there's
und
a lot of new topics
sie
coming
nicht
up
mehr
for
so
them,
groß auftrumpfen können
and
wie
they
früher,
can't be
aber damit sie ihre
as
Firmen
well
noch
representative as
halten
they were
können,
before,
etwas
but that they can maintain
sehen
their
sie sich dann
position.
als
They see themselves
Dienstleister.
as service providers.
Sie peilen
Their
Mobility as a
aim, they're
Service an.
considering mobility as a service
Aktuell,
currently,
ja, auch um die Fahrzeuge zu amortisieren.
also to
Ein
pay
Teil,
with
der
these
sicherlich auch
cars.
interessant
One part
ist
that's
im
also quite
autonomen
interesting in the
Fahren,
autonomous driving
sind
is
diese kleinen Busse, die jetzt
the
schon auch
small
anfangen,
buses which
über
are
Land zu
already
fahren. Dieser
starting
hier
to
ist
go
aus
across the
Bad
country. So
Birnbach.
this one is from Bad
In
Birnbach.
Berlin fahren schon 2
In Berlin, we
Piloten
already have
rum.
2
Die
pilot
fahren
cars
immer
driving
sehr
around,
langsam und können
which usually
aber
drive
on
quite
demand, zum
slowly,
Teil
but
sollen die gerufen
on
werden.
demand they can be
Die
called,
können auch bei schwacheren Infrastrukturen
and they can
einiges
support
abdecken,
areas in with
wenn
weaker
sie gut
infrastructure
integriert
if
werden.
they're
Hierfür
well
gibt es eine ganz
integrated.
interessante Studie
There's a
vom
quite interesting
BME,
study on this done by the
die sich damit befasst, wie man integrierte
German Ministry of
Verkehre,
Energy,
digitale Verkehre
and it's about
ja,
how to connect digital and
wie das
interconnected
gut
traffic
funktionieren
and
kann.
how that model can generally work.
Dann komme ich jetzt zu meinem
Now I'm
zweiten Punkt,
coming
das
to
heißt
my
Mobility
second
as a
point, which is the
Service, auch
mobility
ein
as a
großer Bereich
service, also quite a large area
in der vernetzten
in the
Mobilität.
interconnected mobility.
Da gibt es eine
There is a
einen schwedischen Innovations-Think Tank, der möchte
innovation
das
think
System
tank
der Systeme entwickeln.
that
Das
wants
ist
to develop the ultimate system, so
Vision,
sort of a overarching solution
die passieren könnte. Es sollen
that could
sämtliche
be
Verkehre sozusagen
happening. So
zusammengefasst
all
werden.
sorts
Es
of
kommt
traffic
an
should
und für
be
sich auch immer darauf an, wer sich mit diesem Thema beschäftigt.
focused
Für
on
einige,
one
für die
platform. It already depends on
businessorientierten
who's more
Anbieter,
oriented. If this more for the
Player in diesem Bereich,
businesses
ist es
in this
eher,
area,
businessorientiert.
this is of
Dabei
course
entstehen dann
mainly for
Meta-Apps, die
making money.
verschiedene
So it's
Verkehrsmittel zusammenfassen.
metric apps
Die,
who
da geht es auch viel darum,
assemble a division in a number of
Payment-Methoden
services. There's payment
zusammenzufassen.
method in one
Das ist die eine Hälfte.
solution.
Die
That's
anderen
one
Player sind dann
part, and the
eher
other players
Kommunen
are sort of
und öffentliche
communals and
Verkehrsverbünde und so
public
weiter, die sich dann
transport
überlegen,
associations who
wie kann man alles
decide on who
zusammenfassen,
can
alle Verkehre
be set up
Verkehrsmittel
to
zusammenfassen, die aktuell möglich sind. Das heißt zum einen die öffentlichen Verkehre,
all the
aber
traffic
natürlich auch
methods
die
that are
neuen
currently possible,
Player, die Sharing-Systeme,
the new sharing systems
Bikes,
for the
Roller,
bikes, for
Autos, wie kann
e-scooters, for
das
cars.
alles
How can all of
zusammengefasst
these
werden,
be
so
put
dass
together
es hinterher Sinn
so
macht,
that in the
dass
end
es
it makes
orchestrierbar
sense,
ist,
that it can
dass
be orchestrated?
ja, dass es auch Sinn für die Gesellschaft macht.
That makes sense also for
Es
society.
gibt natürlich wirklich viele neue Möglichkeiten,
Of course, there's
da
lots of
die den
possibilities
Verkehr tatsächlich auch verbessern
to improve
können, einfach
traffic,
dadurch, dass die
even then when
Zahlung
the
vereinheitlicht wird.
payment
Irgendwann
is
wird dann auch
standardized.
aktuell haben ja sehr viele
And
Apps
currently, I'm sure there's
für
lots of people who have lots of
irgendwelche
apps for
Fahrzeuge,
all sorts of cars,
Sharing-Fahrzeuge auf
for
dem Smartphone.
on
Das
your
würde dann wieder
smartphones. This would
zurückgefahren werden
all
können.
be
Es
reduced
gibt dann
and
halt
go
weniger
back
Apps und so
as
weiter. Also
less
es gäbe eine
different
sehr
apps, and there'd be a
vernetzte
very
Mobilität, die
interconnected
auch sehr leicht
mobility,
zugänglich ist,
which would be easily
was dann
accessible,
sogar zum einen multimodale
which would even
Mobilität,
mean
also man
multimodal
kann aus einem
mobility.
gewissen
So you
Pool
can select from a
sozusagen sich die
pool
Dinge
of
aussuchen, aber
different
auch
choices,
intermodale
but also
Mobilität, also
intermodal mobility, so
Mobilitätsketten
mobility
sozusagen
chains.
ermöglichen würde. Das heißt, man
That
kann
means
in kürzester Zeit
in
flexibel
short term,
umsteigen,
you
was
can
weiß ich,
switch
vom
between different
Fahrrad
modes of
auf
traffic,
die
from the
S-Bahn
bike
und wieder
to
zurück zu
the
einem Sharing-Bike
a
oder
local
zu einem
train,
Roller.
back to
Einfach
another
deswegen,
bike
weil die
on
Algorithmen
e-scooter.
dahinter das
And because the
ermöglichen, weil es
algorithms behind
sehr
this
leicht zu
understand
handeln
it,
ist. Das
because
ist die
they very,
Vision.
very easy to
Das ist
handle
natürlich technisch
this.
sehr schwer
That's the vision, but it's
herzustellen.
very difficult to do technically.
Und das Problem ist, ja, da müssen natürlich, ihr wisst es alle, viele Daten
And as you know, there's
es muss
lots of
sehr
data
viel
putting
zusammengefasst
together,
werden.
and lots of things need to be
Das
put
sind,
together.
ja, es ist natürlich, kann dann auch zu einem wahnsinnigen Kontrolltool
And this
mutieren,
can, of
was
course,
sehr
turn
viele
into
Leute
control to
ausschließen kann
what
aus der
lots of
Mobilität.
people
Gerade weil halt
will
auch Finanzen
disincentive
und so
people
weiter
to use it, because, of course, there's a financial data integration, as you can see in China, and with the social scoring,
System, was da gerade
which is being currently
was
established,
hier für Europa sicherlich nicht wünschenswert
which
ist.
I would clearly
Aber
see
jetzt
as
schon
not
sind
desirable
natürlich
for
auch,
Europe.
Versicherungen und so weiter daran interessiert,
But of course, there's
sich
insurances
an
being
diesem
interested of mobility as a service concepts.
Auch die EU macht inzwischen
Even the EU
Anstrengungen und hat da schon
puts in efforts
Stiftungen gegründet und so
to
weiter.
build foundations
Jetzt
on
wollte
working with
ich
this kind of data.
einige, ja, Mobility as a Service
Now
ist
I
für
wanted
die
to,
verschiedenen
so mobility as a service is for the different areas differently specified.
in den Vereinigten Staaten.
For example, in the US,
Wie üblich relativ viel Wert auf Business gelegt. Nur
as
natürlich
usual,
auch
there is the focus
mit ihrer
on
Umwelt. Sie haben auch
business,
Verkehre, die nicht, das ist dort sehr
but they
autolastig. Und
also,
wenn sie es schaffen, das zu vernetzen,
and their main focus is on cars, on automotive. So for them, it would be beneficial to go for this approach because they might be actually improving their environmental awareness.
Sehr gut integrieren in deren Mobilität, weil halt da tatsächlich
So
aktuell klappt.
for them, it's way easier to integrate this new way of mobility because they have a large gap actually.
Die da eingeführt werden, aktuell natürlich sehr spannend und
And for their tech companies, this is very interesting. So this is also for them quite
viel
So for China, this is different. There, it's more about control
weil das an und für sich mehr
and
ja, es ist in dieses Social Scoring
so,
System
yes, what I mentioned before, the social scoring system, it will be integrated into this one. In Europe, if it will work fine, it's about connecting regional transports,
sehr stark ist im öffentlichen Verkehr.
because Europe already is very strong in the public transport
Sich so
sector.
ein bisschen zu retten vor den großen Business-Tendenzen
So here in Europe, it's more to save ourselves from the large business interests.
die urbanen Verkehre, vernetzten Verkehre, sich da so zu positionieren.
So it's as I said before, more about connecting the urban public transport systems.
Konzepte entwickelt, wie das passieren kann.
And there are currently concepts being developed how to do that.
Bei der Mobility as a Service ist gerade
The mobility as a service
für die urbanen Verkehre wird halt gerade viel
for the
diskutiert.
urban
Wer
transports,
hat wann den Hut auf?
it is
Wie kriegt man das
currently
am besten
heavily
hin?
discussed
Geht es
who
darum,
shall be responsible.
Am spannendsten sind natürlich Konzepte, die sowohl die öffentlichen Verkehre,
So the most interesting concepts here are where the urban as well as the over-regional transport systems are being connected.
Nextbike gibt es ja, glaube ich, auch in Leipzig, dass das alles
So,
zusammengefasst wird.
for example, Nextbike exists in several cities, so how could we interconnect this?
Hand gegeben, oder gibt es Konzepte, die sich dazwischen
Or are there concepts that are in between? So to distribute responsibilities and setting up an overarching transport system. So these are the questions. Who's taking responsibility, companies or the public? Here's an example which I found very interesting during my research, because this is a very good example for connected mobility. During only 2 years, thousands of e-scooters have been distributed everywhere in China, in Europe, in a lot of cities, which has been, and this endeavor has been supported by a large venture capital, because they saw business models and they saw money. So these is the first startup was established in 2017 in the US. What I found very interesting, that the German Minister for Transport, Mr. Scheuer, was very much in favor of this, although it's a very business-driven solution that has been pushed into the public. What's interesting about these e-scooters is that the finance is global, but the actual scooters are manufactured in China.
Haben die sogar Verbindungsingenieure, die sich mit den Herstellern zusammensetzen, weil sie festgestellt haben, die Fahrzeuge haben eine überhaupt nicht zum Pass, die müssen nach 3 Monaten.
The operators have now been getting in contact with the manufacturers because the e-scooters are not sufficiently long. So their durability is not long enough, so they have been getting in contact with the manufacturer to solve this, so that those scooters don't need to be replaced anymore as fast
Was
as.
bei diesen Fahrzeugen total interessant ist, die Entsorgung ist nicht geklärt und man hat auch schon
And
bei den
yes, and
E-Bikes und
connected
bei
to this, what is interesting about these e-scooters, that it is not at all solved how to actually recycle those e-scooters.
niemand weiß, wie sie entsorgt werden
So
sollen.
there are large
Das ist
amounts of
besonders
old
kritisch,
and broken
weil
e-scooters that are lying around on large heaps where no one knows how to recycle them.
Tier, Voi und so weiter versuchen gerade
So the
Lösungen zu
operators are
für
currently trying to find solutions for this problem, in particular to recycle the batteries.
Lippenbekenntnisse, es ist noch nicht viel
But for
wirklich
now,
Fixes da und
there's nothing tangible
was
that they
dann
actually offer.
passiert.
So I'm curious what's going to happen in this area of recycling.
Die Frage für Europa ist eben auch, sind diese Fahrzeuge
The particular question
in
for
der Menge,
Europe,
machen die Sinn? Weil
is it actually sensible to have this large amount of
also diese
transport
die
devices?
nicht für den,
So bikes or
die
scooters.
aus dem privaten Bereich im öffentlichen Bereich laufen müssen, sind halt natürlich schneller kaputt.
So
Was schon
because these publicly distributed devices will be broken way faster than private devices.
worden. Sicherlich ist es auch ein Datenmodell, ein Modell gewesen, wie man an Daten kommt.
And the usage of the sensor data, it needs to be thought through.
Das sollte man an und für sich so nicht akzeptieren.
So it needs to be discussed whether it can be accepted, how this sensor data is being used, this data collection.
So, und jetzt komme ich
And now
nähere ich mich meinem eigentlichen Thema an, meinem Projekt.
And now I approach my project, so the topic of my project.
Jetzt wechsle ich sozusagen
Now I change
auf den Zustand von E-Bikes im, wie die aktuelle Situation bei E-Bikes ist.
Now I focus on what the current situation on e-bikes is. So a lot of things changed during the last years.
Sie sind an und für sich inzwischen voll vernetzt.
They are actually all very well interconnected now.
Die Moment.
Just a moment, sorry.
Ja, in den letzten Jahren hat sich, wie gesagt, sehr viel getan.
So during the last years, a lot of things changed.
Die Uni Delft entwickelt
The University of Delft
Self-Balancing System, was demnächst auf
developed
den Markt
a
kommt. Das
self-balancing system,
sich,
which
selbst
means
ausbalancieren können.
that
Eine
the
der
bikes
interessantesten
can
Entwicklungen
self-balance
gerade ist
actually.
der Chainless Drive, also das
And the
sozusagen
most
gefahren werden kann.
prominent project is actually chainless driving, so fully electronically driving.
Prototypen vorgestellt worden von Heinzmann und Scheffler.
So prototypes have been
90
shown.
mal die Idee entstanden. Jetzt ist es soweit, dass die inzwischen möglich geworden sind und dass man die
And now these prototypes are actually real and can be used in real life.
unglaublich viele Sensoren jetzt auch also
There are a large amount of sensors on these
diese
bikes.
kommen inzwischen immer mehr Sensoren. Sie werden immer elektronischer, also es gibt elektronische Dämpfung, elektronische
There is electronic dampening.
natürlich Bremsen, Gangschaltung, inzwischen gibt es, Bosch hat eine ABS.
And an ABS from Bosch, sorry.
Bikes. Es gibt inzwischen
There are
Lenker, die vibrieren,
vibrating bikes.
dem Fahrzeug zu nahe kommt.
If you are too close to a person,
Für die Fahrzeuge. Man hat, ja, man kann sie inzwischen sozusagen so sehen wie
you can
Autos.
see them like cars, like small cars.
Und sie sind natürlich,
And they are,
also sie sind natürlich auch sehr kommunikativ. Sie haben
and they're very communicating. They have board computers. You can integrate your smartphone.
Der Nachteil ist inzwischen bei den E-Bikes auch.
The disadvantage of e-bikes, however, is
benötigen natürlich Strom.
that a lot of these components need power.
Ja, jetzt wie bin ich
Now,
eigentlich zu diesem Projekt gekommen,
how
das
did I
ich
get to my project,
initiieren möchte?
which I will initiate now?
Ich beschäftige mich ja seit 2002 mit
I
E-Bikes,
have
hatte
been
das
dealing with
alles
e-bikes
als
since 2002, initially
gemacht.
quite conventional, was dealing with conventionally,
Produktentwicklung und so
did
weiter.
product development,
Und dann hatte ich mein erstes Smartphone. Und
and then I got my first smartphone,
Google, ohne die großen Konzerne.
and I realized without Google, without the big companies,
Hier,
I tried the Fairphone. I wanted to go towards open source operating systems on my phone, and I noticed without Google I'm not really able to do anything. If I'm not connecting to Google, I'm not really able to use my phone at all. I thought this is difficult because, in my opinion, everybody should be able to decide for himself. But whom am I talking to? Yeah, that was one of the aspects. In those days, Bosch was quite big in this market. They developed a smart bike with a board computer, and the data since 2014 went into the Bosch cloud. And in 2014, this was without consent, without any asking. They directly went into the Bosch cloud from the bike. Okay, I understand that from the point of view of providing the services is necessary, but at the same time, a lot of private data gets onto the server, and I thought this is a bit of a problem. And this was one of my issues why I said, okay, maybe we should do something different in this area. On top of that, I noticed that there's a lot of development in the area of 3D printing. 3D printing becomes more and more important these days for small series production, for trial production, and that a lot of plastics is used in this area, and that this is a problem with respect to the environment that is really a big disgrace. But I thought this is a very interesting technology, and so my idea was, how can I use 3D printing? How can I get it towards a more useful and more environment-friendly modulus of 3D printing, and how can I integrate that into the process of development? Since 10 years, so this was a third important point for me. Since 10 years, Bosch was in the e-bike area, quite active. And yeah, they pretty much rule the field. They basically make it very difficult for other companies. So there is not really a lot of pluralistic. Yeah, it's basically just one company, and they're the only ones which are active there. So I thought maybe we should try something else. So I don't really have a good idea in the software area, but I have some ideas in the hardware area. So I thought, well, maybe we should just try it. Maybe we should just develop an alternative bike, an alternative vehicle, which is decentralized, which is open source, which is sustainable, which has sustainable components. Yeah, the idea was to start a project which is something similar to the Fairphone or to the Shift phone in the smartphone area, which provides an alternative to the current developments. And when I started dealing with this project, I realized quite quickly, getting back towards the e-scooter issue, that it's not very helpful if basically the money dictates one particular area, one particular vehicle. So for me, what was very important for this project was the financing, to get a sustainable way of financing the project. For this, you have to contemplate to find something which fits the project. Very important for a sustainable project is to get a realistic life cycle calculation of costs. So what is important is that you look at from the first step of the project right to the end of the recycling, of the getting rid of the waste. What are the consequences for the environment? What are the fitting scenarios? What are the options to play them through to see what options, what are possibilities for the project? Especially for the hardware aspects of the project, my ideas were to start developing in silico on the computer. So this is like the first time I'm presenting this project here. If people are interested, I'm very happy to share more about the vehicle. So it's just to suggest the vehicle. It's not that I really want to build this. It's just I want to present this. It's just I thought it's a nice idea. So getting back to the financial aspects, I think this project would get going with crowdfunding, with collecting money, with donations. My idea was really to develop this into a society-type model for development of software. So the idea is really for the software development to start a prototype fund with which you can really we can start developing the software. And from there, we would go with usual models, for example, like with Nextcloud, that the software itself is free, but support would cost something. For me, sustainability is really important. I heard the talk from Uber, and I found it quite remarkable that these people are also dealing with these aspects. That one of their concerns is that the software which is developed needs to run on these vehicles for 5 years. So it's very important that the software is fitting for the vehicle. Of course, important are licensing options, such that the licensing options fit very well with everything. And yeah, so question is which foundations have taken over such open source projects?
besonders der Rahmen,
The
halt
cradle,
für die ganze Hardware würde ich das Projekt gerne an Cradle to Cradle orientiert.
so for the setting of the project, I would like to orient it similar to from the cradle to cradle process.
Guckt man sich an.
So the idea is that you really look at the whole life cycle of the project.
Die nachhaltigste Möglichkeit ist.
What is the most sustainable option for structuring?
Guckt, wie man das dann am besten umsetzen kann.
And what is the best way to get it done?
Weitestmöglich digital gemacht werden.
My idea here is to do as much as possible digital, to do the development, the scratching of the whole project digitally, and very important for open source and for a fair vehicle, to have it to give rise to a robust project which is as simple as possible and as clear as possible, especially if many people are working on such a project. It's really clear. It's really important to keep it simple and clear and use the most simple solution available. Very important is, since it's an e-bike, is the whole machinery to get the bike going. Question is, what do you use? Do you use conventional engine? That's probably the most fitting for this project, because developing something specific would take years, so best to rely to something conventional which already exists. So questions here, of course, what are the battery capacities? Should it be a vehicle for town? Should it be all around? Should it be useful for many areas? We really would need to discuss this, because this is very crucial for the whole design, for the setting of the project. Another question is with respect to assistancy systems. Which such assistancy systems do we want to integrate with the project? Right from the start of the project, which ones we want to have in the project?
Well, interesting is also how we build the frame that's capable to work in different conditions. For example, there's the carrier for baggage that you can attach and take off easily, and there's of course the question, is it supposed to be a child's seat? Can you put it on or not? How can you make that modularly directly while working on the design? For software, of course, that's where I'm not so strong, but this is really where, how do you get an open source system for a onboard computer? Which OS do you choose? I've seen a project, the Obico from 2008. Do you build on top of that, or do you try something completely new? I think we should look at basing this on what's already been done in the open source area. While my research, I've seen quite a few things, but there's a lot of things in my area of product development. It's a good direction to take. So, to be specific, I would say, where are the bases that we can go from? How can a Linux be developed?
also als Betriebssystem entweder
which
Linux oder ROS
works
oder
well, or a developer Linux or an
verbessert werden,
ROS
dass es
can be
hinterher auch
developed,
robust funktionieren kann.
that it can robustly
Auch
function
die
on the system.
Embedded Software
Also, the
müsste
embedded
neu
software
überlegt werden.
needs to be rethought.
Wie gesagt, es soll alles ja, bei dem Bordcomputer gibt es ja
So, the
inzwischen
onboard
im
computer
konventionellen Bereich schon gute
in
Vorlagen
the
mit dem
convention area, there are
Computer und
all sorts of
Bordcomputer mit
bases
der
from
Kobi
Bosch
App
with the Kobe
und so
app
weiter. Ich
and
denke,
so
an
on.
sowas könnte man sich dann orientieren,
I
wenn
think
man
you
mit
could
Open
orient
Source
it on something
anfängt,
like that if you
sowas neu
start
zu
working with
entwickeln
open
und zu
source,
integrieren.
redeveloping something like that and integrating it.
Ja, dann muss man halt dann nochmal darüber nachdenken, was möchte man genau
And then, of
haben,
course, you've got to
wie möchte
rethink
man das
what exactly do you want, how do you embed it.
Um jetzt wenn es dann alles klappt, dann gibt es natürlich auch
So if this is all
dann
working,
kann
then
man
it's of
natürlich das
course,
leicht auch
it's easy to
sollte das Fahrzeug dann
So,
funktionieren,
should the
dann
vehicle
kann
will
man
be
natürlich auch
working, then of
versuchen,
course you
aus
can,
diesem Fahrzeug auch
from
ein
this
Sharing-Fahrzeug
bike,
zu machen, wenn es robust
turn
genug
into a
ist,
sharing
sowohl
device.
von der
So,
Software
for
als
example,
auch
from the
von der
software perspective,
Hardware-Seite aus,
from
und
the
man
hardware
kann
perspective,
auch,
and then you can also
die gerade ja, das halt noch in andere Zusammenhänge
and then
einbetten.
you can embed it
Aber
into
dafür muss
other
die grundlegende
circumstances.
Entwicklung
But for that, of course, the basic development has to be done.
Deswegen möchte ich
This is why
relativ
I
klein und
want
handlich
to
in Berlin starten,
quite
und zwar
effectively
mit dem
start
E-Bike.
small in Berlin, which is a
Das E-Bike Brain, das
wiki,
soll
which is
eine
the brain
Plattform
of the
werden, wo man
e-bike, which is a
erstmal
platform
alles sammelt,
where
was
everything
bereits
can
im
be
Open
collected
Source
what already in
Bereich
open source
gemacht
area
worden
has
ist,
been done,
wo auch eine Bibliothek sein kann,
which can be
was
like a library,
man in der Herstellung und so weiter
what
im
during
Hardware-Bereich
manufacture
für
in
dieses
hardware
Fahrzeug verwenden
can be used for
damit
this
man erstmal überhaupt eine
manufacturing
Basis
process of this
schafft.
bike to create a basis
Dafür habe ich bereits eine Förderung
for,
beantragt.
and this is where I've already
In
applied
Berlin.
for
Dort könnte diese Plattform auch
financial support
entstehen.
from the City Bike Berlin, where this platform could
Da würde es
happen.
erstmal darum gehen, ein Brainstorming, was wollen wir für
And
den Anfang
at the City
auf
Lab, we
dieser
want to do a
Plattform haben.
brainstorming. What do we want to have on this platform,
Ja, und wie kann sie initiiert werden?
and how can we initiate the platform itself?
Tja, es soll halt, es soll erstmal so ein Sammelpool
So this is supposed to be a collection
geschaffen
pool
werden,
of
wie dass man sozusagen eine gute Basis
how that we
für
create a good
dieses
basis for this
E-Bike-Projekt
e-bike
hat, damit dieses
project,
Projekt
so that this
dann hinterher
project
Step by Step
can
entwickelt werden
step by
kann.
step developed. I think that
Da viele Bereiche relativ offen sind, wird es sicher
many
auch
areas are
einige
quite
Zeit,
open, so
wird
I'm
es
sure it's going to
sicherlich
take some
dauern,
time,
damit man hinterher wichtig
so
ist
that in the
einfach,
end
dass
we can,
hinterher ein robustes,
in the end, have a
stabiles
robust, stable
Fahrzeug für den Alltagsgebrauch
bike for the everyday use.
So, wir sind in Berlin auch dabei mit einer Gruppe von Leuten,
So in Berlin, we are
uns
currently underway with a number of
einen
people
Verein zu gründen,
to establish
der sich sozusagen mit dem Bereich
team that was,
theoretisch auseinander,
from a
also
theoretical perspective,
mit dem ganzen
looking
Bereich Fahrräder,
was the whole area of bikes, e-bikes,
auseinandersetzt. Ja. Vielen Dank.
Many thanks.
Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank, Johanna.
Thanks, Johanna. And now we still have 15 minutes for questions. Please come to the microphone. We've got 1, 2, and 3. Without these microphones, we can't do anything. We also have a signal angel who, over the hashtag, will be questioning the saying the questions on the internet. So we start with the microphone 2. Please no other referees but questions.
The question would be, so will this really be happening with this auto car-centric environment that we are living in currently?
We just are supposed to not have it fail, and that's why I want to do the project, and that is the problem. We're moving towards this time. Currently, it's getting worse than better, and this is why these kind of projects are particularly important, because we need to find a way to do something on the road that's different. That's exactly true. But it's certainly not a hopeless situation, because in this area, there's a lot of things that are coming up. I was at the German Ministry of Environment, where they said it was about 5 to 10 years to see what, from a mood perspective, we can be doing in the upcoming years. The key decisions will be taken what is going to be happening later. So this is why I'm doing this project at the moment, to use this time well. Microphone 2.
Hello. Do you know that over 5 years there is an open standard for connecting e-bikes, which has been initiated by the Next Energy EV? So 10 years ago it was still self-made stuff, and now...
Yes, I know this guy. It's my diploma, and that's one of the reasons I'm here. Yes, I was there in this development team. And that's also why I think this is a good idea. This project can become something, because I've got these connections. Before this, doing my research, I've looked at is this even possible, and I've also contacted all the people I know, that I know how is this realistic? Can you make open infrastructure for this? Can you use the energy bus for this project, so that you have a CAN protocol for this vehicle? And there are a few possibilities, sure. Any further questions? Do we have something from the internet? No, we currently don't. So microphone 2.
Good morning. I'm working for General Motors, and we have already built an open source car, like you showed, a small bus. So now my question, do you see potential to...
Absolutely, of course. So I think this is a very, very good. I think these are good possibilities that you now have through this interconnection. So right now, if you don't let yourself make crazy by the automotive people, now you have the possibility to find a true intermodal chain, to really have a multi-mode chain. And this is exactly what I think. This is a good time to develop this kind of project, because now we can say we know the other vehicles, and we can now build interfaces that exactly, for example, for your bus, so that it understands where this bus is heading. I think open source is very important, because on the Eurobike I already realized that, especially in the e-bike area, there is a very, very big interface problem because Bosch is completely closed off, and this is why lots of people are at a block because they can't get access to data and so on and so forth. So just to be working a bit in that direction, because this tiny project, which is a possibility to give a Linux and like Linux is an alternative Windows, so this could be an alternative that you start small, 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 and then it grows, and then at some point it stops Bosch from completely owning the market. Because lots of people in this area say without open source, we can't do anything, especially not in mobility. There's so much data and there's so many flows without open source, we can't do anything. Many thanks, Johanna. I think this is a very, very interesting project. I think all who are interested in have found your contact and can approach you. And I hope we could make it a bit more popular, and a warm applause for Johanna.
Thanks for listening to the